of our current city and city staff. For those that don't know, we are in a search right now for a city manager. We have an interim city manager installed. And to a degree, the process is stalled. There is some quiet conversation also about our real challenge in attracting top-notch talent to our community in that position. And so there's a considerable amount of attention that we have to pay to the infrastructure, the human infrastructure of our city, and really trying to recruit and attract the highest quality city manager that we can, and then by extension to that, paying attention to the environment in which we're asking them to work. And so that's where we start to move into this conversation that we've been having about the Civic Center and City Hall. And I will tell you that I am a proponent of staying in the current Civic Center and in renovating and rehabbing that Civic Center in such a way that it's not only an environment where our staff can excel, but it's also an environment that brings back this idea of the Civic Center to our community. I would love for it to be a central place where we go. You know, such concepts as, do we look at the farmer's market potentially being there, where kids can play in the playgrounds next door, where we can go to the farmer's market. You know, the Civic Center has plenty of room for us to have our meetings, to come in and enjoy that. We can look at how do we pull in outside offices, the township assessor, etc., into that area. So I am very excited about the possibility for what the Civic Center can bring. So the financial challenge is a big challenge in front of us. I will say that there are a number of officials who are well respected running for office, and I've had the great enjoyment of the two opponents that I'm running with in this ward. It's really been a treat. It really has been a pleasure, and I think we've run a very sort of cordial relationship. But I do think that the aldermen that will be installed in this next council have to think beyond just cutting the budget. I think it has to go hand in hand with how do we protect the character and values of our community. The other big issues that are, I think, on the agenda certainly involve economic development. For those that have been following the 708 Church or the Tower development process, which we as candidates have been following very closely, I will tell you just from my position that I've had two problems all along with the central core development, and one of those problems is just the sheer process that I believe it went through in terms of the respect for the citizen involvement on committees and on commissions and how that was handled. But I am a proponent to believe that I would have loved to seen that central core of Evanston really looking at business and office sort of community in that area versus residential. I believe that there's a density of residential units there. Because I believe that one of the things that Evanston can really focus on is what I call the creation of this business experience that people can come to. I look at my own business. You know, we're a professional service. We're in the West Loop of Chicago, and one of the reasons that we're there is because we are surrounded by others who work in our field that we draw upon, that we meet with during lunch, that we go to symposiums or seminars, and I believe that that same experience can be replicated in Evanston. I believe that there is a wealth of individuals who work in professional services, intellectual driven businesses, technology business, where if we create the right environment, that this will be a destination, particularly with Northwestern, and particularly with the entertainment and hospitality that we have. So that would have been my preference. And I also believe in terms of the 708 Church and downtown core, that the quote-unquote public benefits just did not amount to the excess height that was awarded in that. And I think that there is a lot more conversation that needs to be had about how we do make those equations. The other area that I'm very conscious of in economic development is the Central Street master plan, as well as then now by extension the zoning ordinance that has been applied to that. And I do know that that is certainly at the Crawford intersection up here, that is certainly something that this community has been paying attention to. So it is something that I've been looking at and having a lot of conversation with individuals that have been involved with that. And then just quickly, the other key issue areas that I've been focused on, one is this area that I call sort of neighborhood responsiveness. It is this idea of the role an alderman can and should play for a community. that we are here, quote unquote, to help facilitate conversations, discussions. But I will say that there's a cautionary tale in this, that I do not believe that an alderman in the city of Evanston is meant to supplant or in any way defer the necessary relationship that you would have between yourselves and the city staff. I believe that the alderman is here to facilitate that process. So if there's something that you need, if there's something that's not being taken care of, it is the alderman's responsibility to ensure that happens and provide the oversight of the services, because the dependency should not be created between Sarah and myself. The dependency should be something where it's created a relationship between Sarah and the city staff who are the professionals in delivering that. But that's neighborhood responsiveness. It's that access that you would have and availability that I would look to provide in terms of facilitating what those needs are, whether that is the renovation of an open space or that's something that you're trying to get done in your community. I've spent a lot of time working on and creating sort of, I guess, positions on transportation and parking and transit. I've spent a lot of time with small groups of individuals who have helped inform me about the Climate Action Plan, and I'm a strong proponent of the tenets that are in there. And I believe that, and this is sometimes what happens at a city level, is we create the plans, and then we haven't held ourselves accountable to create the tactical steps that we need to take in order to make that happen. It's an aggressive plan, but I believe that the initial steps that need to be taken right away for this new council is, one, to promote sort of a genuine awareness of what are some of the energy efficiency programs that you can avail yourselves of as citizens, and these would be through utilities, state, federal government. I think we spend a lot of time looking internally as a city at our fleet, our own emissions, at the transit, and how we support that. And I'm very interested in the concept of this offshore wind farm, and I know it's wrought with a lot of different questions, in terms of what its feasibility is, but it is an intriguing idea, and I believe that technology evolves every day to make it something that we should be looking at for a long term. So that's transportation and parking, and then the last thing that we've been spending a lot of time talking about has been this idea of access to information. For anybody that's visited the website that we have put up, we spent a lot of time thinking about that. And we were thinking about it in such a way as, how do we create an easy way for the constituents within the ward to get information, as well as share information back on their opinions and their views. And the other use of this too, and this is something that we're using a lot in the private sector, is to create the tools and resources that would really leverage our intellectual capital here in this community. I think it's something that's not necessarily untapped, but not always the best managed in terms of the way in which we use it. And I think that there are tools and resources that we can do. We call it in the private sector developing these communities of practice, these opportunities for people to come together to really work on a particular problem for a defined period of time, and then have their work, and I think the Climate Action Plan is a good example of this, but have their work respected and acknowledged and not ignored. But this is something that we need to build within this community. So that's my spiel, so to speak. But that's that's sort of a wide swath of of issues and ideas that we've been talking a lot about, and that I've definitely had some